Hey, good morning. Good morning. Oh my goodness. Do you see what kind of a day it is? Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. So excited for tonight's Community and Culture Night. We are honored to have local filmmaker Hannah Lindgren with us today. So just wanted to just take a couple moments as we kick off to allow people the opportunity to hop on. So we'll just wait for just a couple seconds and then we'll get going here in just a second. Perfect. Well, we'll get going here in just a moment, but I just want to remind you of a couple different things. We will, first and foremost, and I'll mention this as we wrap up, but we will still be doing a Community and Culture Night event next month. I know it's going to be in December, but we're excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have something super exciting planned that we're getting in the works now. So be paying attention to that, be on the lookout for that. And then remember, today we just have one guest. So after this guest, just like we have for the past two or three, there's gonna be an opportunity for you to hop on a Zoom call so we can actually see each other face to face. It'd be a really good opportunity to connect with Hannah, ask questions, things like that. Should only take about 10 or 15 minutes, but it's a great opportunity to get to chat with each other, connect, and find opportunities to learn more about Hannah that we weren't able to be a part of. So you'll be able to hop on the Zoom afterwards. We'll make sure we put the link and the passcode as well in the chat, but it's also in the group as well. Again, so excited for today. If you had an opportunity to watch 50 Little Birds, it's a fantastic short film, and I can't wait to talk about that process. Have Erica, who is a part of our lead team for Community Culture Night. She's actually going to be interviewing Hannah, and she's going to talk just more about her process and the whole nine yards. And so I'm excited. I just get to sit back and watch, and I'm really excited to hear and learn more about Hannah's story because I know Erica's got some really great questions to bring about. So I'm going to kick myself out. I'm going to bring these two lovely women in, and we're going to get going here in just a sec. All right, guys, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, I'm kicking myself off.
Perfect.
Goodbye.
Awesome. Hi, Hannah. Thanks for joining us tonight. As Nee mentioned, we're just so excited that you're here with us. So to get started, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself briefly to everyone before we dive into some of the questions?
Sure. Is everyone else hearing an echo? I don't know if that's just me. Yeah, I think I'm hearing it from you. Does it sound like I'm echoing? Okay, well then that's fine. No worries. Yeah, so I'm Hannah Lindgren. I'm a local filmmaker. I grew up here on the northeast side. I went to Lawrence North High School, in case we have anyone who's local, and I went to Ball State. I lived in Alabama for a little bit, but I've been back here in Indy for about 3 years. I work for a company called Till It 23 Studios. It used to be called The Story Shop. And yeah, I make documentary films. This is my 5th film. It's my 3rd short, and I made 2 features as well. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good enough background.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, awesome. So sounds like the people aren't hearing an echo, so hopefully it's not too awful for you as we go through. Okay. Okay, so love to hear that. Obviously, a lot of us have had the chance to watch 50 Little Birds coming into this. And maybe if you're joining us and you didn't get to watch 50 Little Birds, don't hesitate to still drop your email address in the comments. We are happy to also share it with you so that you can see Hannah's film and kind of what we're talking about today. But to get started, do you want to just share a little bit with us about what sparked your interest for becoming a filmmaker?
Yeah, so I discovered my love for video my freshman year of high school. Before that, I was kind of interested in photography as a hobby, but I thought that I wanted to go into anthropology, specifically archaeology. And I think I loved that aspect just because I grew up with parents who loved history and loved stories like that. And so I think that was kind of a good segue into nonfiction storytelling through video. And I had a choice my freshman year of high school to pick one of three creative classes, yearbook, photography, or video. And I wanted to do video, I wanted to do photo, but I got stuck in video. But it was serendipitous because I loved it. One of the first projects that we had to do was interviewing somebody in our family over Thanksgiving. And so I ended up interviewing my mom's dad, my grandfather. And he's a veteran, career military, and I just interviewed him a little bit about his life and put it together with some photos. It was really like rudimentary stuff at the time. We were still even recording like on tape, like on DV tapes at the time. And but when I played it back for my family, my grandfather got emotional, and he's a hard dude. So seeing this, just the validation of telling somebody's story and the emotions that it can bring up in the person that you're telling it about, but also how other people can relate to it, I think is a really good empathy builder and something that we need a lot more of. And that just, I just fell in love with that. And so then I got involved in our TV show in high school, which was really only my only really like choice or outlet to do at the time. I wasn't really interested in news, but it was what I was able to do. Did some fun stuff on the side, and then I went to Ball State, and that's where I got degrees in film and television and anthropology. So, yeah.
I love it. I just put two and two together. I know you had kind of shared a little bit of that path with me prior, but about this time, that many years ago, you were kind of working on that first project. So that's incredible. And now you're seeing your shorts and your features out in like the festival world and coming on with people like us to talk about that experience. So that's just incredible. That's very moving to me. So love to hear it. Okay, so I know really quick, this is not something we talked about, but you spoke that you have some shorts and some features. For those of us that don't know what that means, can you give us like a really brief description so we just know the difference and feel like we can talk the talk a little bit?
Sure. So it depends on the festivals, kind of what they deem shorts, but usually shorts are anything under 40 minutes. And then usually features are over 40 minutes, but most of them are over an hour at that point. So, features are just anything over an hour. You see a lot of those kind of feature documentaries on Netflix and stuff like that. Shorts, you really only really get a chance to see those when you go to film festivals, I feel like. And when I was in high school, my mom would take me to the Heartland Film Festival here in Indy. Back when I was like, 14, 13, I was going, and we would go see the shorts in particular because I loved being able to, they gave you these little pieces of paper with the names of each film, and then there was like lines for like 1 through 5, and you got to rate each one as you were watching them, and I found that so fun. And so I loved it, and I've always loved seeing shorts collections and how they program them together, how they try and pick ones that are going to flow well together and things like that. It's one of my favorite things, and it's a really great it takes a lot of money and a lot of time and resources to make a feature film. And so sometimes a story doesn't require a feature, to get the whole idea across. So it's like kind of a nice thing for filmmakers to be able to produce a little bit more easily than a feature film. And I saw a comment, somebody said they thought a short was 5 to 10 minutes. Like a lot of them are 5 to 10 minutes, and it's kind of hard for festivals. I've worked for Heartland, so I know a little bit about the programming side, and it's a little difficult to program shorts that are like 40 minutes. So I would say usually they don't go any longer than 20, but I've seen ones that go up to 40.
Okay, very cool. I also had no idea, so that was so helpful. Okay, going back to kind of just the work that you do and the profession, Can you share with us, like, what has been the hardest part of the profession? And would you even go a little bit further to share with us maybe how that has changed? This scene has changed really from March until now as we deal with COVID and the pandemic and kind of restrictions in festivals and things like that.
Yeah, I think probably the hardest part about filmmaking is money. I mean, it's just, you know, unless you are a very well known, especially, I'm mostly talking documentaries here, but unless you're pretty well known for it, or you get, a deal from Netflix or somebody else to produce something, you're self-funding, or you're crowdsourcing. And that can be pretty difficult. In addition to most of the time you're hustling for your own, work to pay the bills anyway. So I do, like, the vast majority of what I do is client work. I still consider it nonfiction storytelling. It's a lot of brand stories and things like that that are helping, small businesses and communities and nonprofits and other places really get across the messages that are important. That's one reason why I love working for Tilt 23, is because I had my own production company for 3 years after I graduated from college. And that was the type of work that I did. A lot of nonprofit stuff, a lot of stuff that was cause-based. And that's why my company was called Deliberate Media. I was trying to be intentional about not just producing any content, but producing content that can help people make a difference. And so that's what I love about Tilt 23 is the large majority of our clients have something to do with some sort of cause that's important or some sort of change making in the world. And that's what I love. So shooting right now is really interesting. Things kind of came to a complete halt in March and April. They've started to pick up a little bit as people realize that we can shoot relatively safely with a small crew, with masks, with distance, with sanitizing everything. So we've been shooting and just trying to stay safe. There's also been a lot of, if you can't have a ton of people on the scene while you're shooting, you can, remote your client in so they can at least see, what's going on and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that overall, I would say the difficult part is just finding the funds to do it and the time to do it when you're working on, projects that pay.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I was just really curious, obviously it has to move forward, but with everything looking very different, I was just wondering how that shifted. But it sounds like y'all have persevered and are continuing to do the good work. So that's incredible. And I'm sure you all are thankful for that, and your clients are certainly thankful. Would you share with us what is something that most people don't know about the work that you do? Or like misconceptions even?
Well, it's really funny. I think everybody here is filmmaker and thinks that it's just like really cool and really glamorous. I get that all the time, like with dating, like people hearing that I'm a filmmaker and just being like, oh my God, that's so cool. But I feel like this job is just like any other job. It's going to have parts that aren't fun about it. And you're going to have to do work that doesn't, make you excited. And that's just what it is. So I think that's kind of the misconception. And also I think there's a misconception that everybody who's a filmmaker is like 100% a creative. I am a creative person and I consider myself a storyteller, but I love the nitty gritty details of producing something and having a production go smoothly or a shoot go smoothly, just kind of from, ideation to the end product. I'm one of those, like, I love to check things off a list. And so to be able to just sort of like check my way off a list through a project and have it be successful at the end, I love that. So I think, a lot of people think that we're all just like super creative, like people, but there's some of us who I think keep people grounded. And that's also another, I think people don't understand like what a producer does, what a director does, like what are all the different roles. And at least how I've done, the work that I've done, the producer is the detail person, is sort of the higher level, making sure all the boxes get checked, make sure all the T's get crossed and the I's get dotted, and but also kind of making sure the overall creative vision is being seen through, and assisting the director. And the director, sometimes the director is also shooting, so they're also the cinematographer, but sometimes they're not. So like was the director of 50 Little Birds, but I didn't shoot most of it. I was working with cinematographers. So there's that kind of relationship too. But the director is kind of that next level umbrella of making sure that the creative visioning is coming into reality when you're shooting. And then the cinematographers, they're really focused on the artistry of the shot and making sure the shot looks beautiful, and is what the director wants. So.
Okay, awesome. Yes, I also, I read the caption, or I don't even know the credits, and I see the names, and I'm like, I don't really know what they do. So that is super helpful to have you explain that. So I want to kind of move over a little bit more towards 50 Little Birds and kind of tie into there so we can talk about that piece for you. Will you share with us a little bit about the emotional ties to the projects that you work on and how that shows up for you?
Yeah, so I guess I can tell you a little bit about how and why 50 Little Birds got produced. So I've known Jeff for a while. So I mentioned that I had a production company for 3 years when I graduated from college. That was 2013 to 2016. And that was in downtown Noblesville. And downtown Noblesville is a wonderful community. And one of the things that I love most about it is the way that they support and uplift the arts. I was fortunate enough to be renting a house and studio next to Nickel Plate Arts, which is a big arts organization in downtown Noblesville. And through them, I, got to interact with artists of all sorts. And then through sort of just, I guess, grassroots efforts, a community was formed called NOMA, which stands for Noblesville Makers. And so that was makers of all sorts, whether it was somebody like Jeff who makes something with his hands, or somebody like me who makes, something digitally. And so that was a really cool community of creatives that started to get together. And I got to know Jeff a little bit more through that. And I just always admired his work and thought it was beautiful. My mom also works for Hamilton County Tourism, and so she worked with him years ago on some projects. So I've always kind of known about him. And then when I was living in Birmingham, Alabama, I was following him on Instagram and just loving his work. And I really wanted to tell a story about it, but I knew that there was like something there, but I didn't know what it was. And I was living like 500 miles away, and like it wouldn't have worked. So I had talked to him about it, and he was totally down to do a film, but it just didn't work. And then I moved back here. I worked for a nonprofit for a year, and then finally I found my way to Tilt 23 Studios. And when I was working for them, I was like, hey, I've had this idea kicking around for years that I've wanted to do. And I know that you guys want to do more like in-house storytelling that's not just all for clients. And I think this one could be a pretty like good entry into that. And so Jeff and I sat down again and started talking about it. And I truly think that it was meant to be done at the time that it was done. I would not have been able to produce, what I did if I wasn't with this team. And most importantly, I think Jeff and I were not ready to do the film. So this is where the emotional component comes in. Because Jeff, I think I always felt sort of like we were kindred spirits, but I couldn't really put a name to why. Obviously we are different genders and we're like have a large age gap. So I was like, why do I feel like I like understand him? This is weird. And as we sort of got talking and planning the film and interviewing him, things just sort of started to come out, some parallels in our lives. One of which is mental health, and how our mental health impacts our creativity, and how our creativity impacts our mental health. And also how things that we experienced in our childhood impact how we interact with the world and how our relationships are affected. That some would call that trauma. I call that trauma. I am diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and he is not diagnosed, but I know he has some things from his childhood that still impact him to this day. And so I think once all of that started to come out, that's what I realized the film was about. It wasn't going to be, you know, a resume of all the beautiful art and things he's done in the art world his entire life. It was going to be his why. It was going to be about him. And, you know, he had to really trust me. In order to do that, we had to build a really good trust. And I think part of that was because I really, truly understood some things that he had gone through in my own way. I could relate. And, you know, to his credit, he was willing to continue going forward with a film that was going to be about his life instead of necessarily about his art. I think it's about both, but it's, you know, bearing his soul to the world. And because he had started to go to therapy and was in that place where he could share about it and was willing to share about it with other people on such a public platform is how we got here. So there was a lot of emotional work done behind the scenes. And one of the interesting parts of that too is we did 3 or 4 hours of interviews with him, and I wasn't getting the content that I really needed in order to cut a story. Usually I get an interview with somebody and then I chop it apart and I put it in an order that makes sense for telling the story. I just wasn't getting it. And so what we ended up doing was I wrote out a bunch of questions for him, and he basically gave me like 12 typed pages of response. And this was very Jeff. He told me when I gave him to him, he was like, I'm either going to do this within the next 2 days or it's going to be the last minute running up to the deadline. And true to his word, he did it like the day before I needed it, after he'd had them for like 2 months. So, but they were all heartfelt and truly his words. And then that's why we're listed as co-writers on the film, is I took his words and I just put them in a different order, and those are the words that he then read as the voiceover for the film. So that was emotional work on his part, having to write out all those answers, and then I had to figure out a way where it would hit emotionally for the viewers as well, like that would make sense. So yeah, that's all that emotional work.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much impact in there, I feel like. And I mean, without knowing that backstory, we wouldn't know that. So that's really cool to hear about. I was wondering, I'm not going to lie, when I saw your name pop up in the credits for writer, I was wondering kind of how that works out and how that ties together. So that's really cool to kind of understand that part of it. So I know you and I have talked a little bit about that filming, and you shared, you were working with the cinematographers, but can you share with us what your experience looked like filming on Sugar Creek and kind of what happened there?
Yeah. So I'll give you guys 2 behind the scenes kind of things. The first one, I'll get to Sugar Creek in a second because that is a harrowing story. But the first one is, if you noticed all the stuff that was shot in Jeff's studio, his studio is actually in a basement. So there's no natural light, but it looks like there's light coming in through those windows because he has windows that form part of his wall to his studio. And the cinematographers on the film, Chris Keaton and Kyle Fisher, they managed to make that look like it was like out in the middle of the forest with sun shining in. And that was incredible work by them. Obviously.
Yeah, I feel very fooled. That's incredible work. I definitely would have never guessed that was a basement.
Right? Yes. So they were just incredible to work with that. And then Jeff's studio in itself is almost a character in the film. He's very particular about the aesthetic of his studio, which is why I had, in all the sort of flashback scenes, I decided to put those old photos within his studio environment, because I wanted them to I wanted to feature the studio in another way as kind of being a character. But anyway, so Sugar Creek, this is a fun story. So we, all the stuff that was shot on Sugar Creek, so all of the river footage that you saw was shot in one evening. It was in September of last year, and the plan was to get there in time to kind of get a bunch of nice golden hour shots, you know, some nice like evening beautiful shots. We were there on a beautiful day. Jeff had done the route a couple weeks, 3 weeks before, I think, and he'd clocked it at 3.5 hours. And so we were like, cool, like we can get in, we can do this, we can. So we had 2 cameras, I think, and an aerial videographer, and we had a whole crew with us. And we had partnered with Friends of Sugar Creek to borrow some of their kayak or their canoes. And then I had my kayak and Jeff was in his canoe, Joe. And anyway, long story short, it hadn't rained in those 3 weeks between when Jeff clocked it and when we did it. So right away, we realized the water was extremely low, and we sent some crew members back. And then we just kept foraging on. But we were super slow because we were having to get out and drag our boats for a lot of this instead of, you know, just riding the water. We got some stunning footage, as you saw. But by the time we got to this spot where I knew I wanted to get aerials from, near Shade State Park, it had like already been 2 hours and we were not even a quarter of the way. And there's no out point between there and when we were getting out. I mean, there was nowhere to just take your boat out. Like the next out point was the point where we were supposed to get out. And we were arranging for
So you're like in it.
Yes. We were arranging for Friends of Sugar Creek to pick us up there at the 3.5 hour mark, and take our canoes back up to where we parked and everything. So anyway, it got pitch black. It was like after 10 p.m., no lights, like Sugar Creek's in the middle of nowhere. We had no cell service because it's in the middle of nowhere. We were having to drag our boats through this stuff. We had like 3 headlamps between us. That's it. So we're in the pitch black, tripping over river rocks, like pulling our boats, all of our equipment. We finally managed to get a little bit of a signal to see Google Maps, and we saw this bridge called Mile High Bridge, and we were like, bridge, like there has to be a way to get up there. So we aimed for Mile High Bridge. At this point, we'd probably been going for 4 hours. We find the bridge, and it's called Mile High Bridge for a reason. It is really freaking high. Like, it is very inaccessible. And so we are all exhausted. I had a kidney infection at this point as well. So I was, like, sick and was still doing this. And we get there, and my coworker Chris managed to find these like private staircase up this huge embankment. Like there was probably 100 steps up. And so he finally got us, he went up, he checked it out. He was like, there's no like dogs or, you know, somebody's house. I don't think we're going to like get in trouble. So then we had to pull 4 boats, all of our equipment, all of us humans and a dog up these like 100 flights of stairs, to get to there. And so we got up there and we couldn't get a signal to try and get through to our friends who were supposed to pick us up. We managed to get through to the sheriff, but right as I got through to the sheriff, a text came through from Friends of Sugar Creek saying, stay there, we're coming to get you. So this was like 11 p.m. at this point. And so they came rolling up and they had beer and wine and cheese, and everybody like snacked and ate and cried a little bit. And then we all got in the vans, got the canoes like packed up, and got driven back to our cars. But it was insane. Like it was, I seriously we didn't know what to do because the out point ended up being about halfway, and it took us probably 4 or 5 hours just to get to the halfway point, which the whole thing was supposed to take us 3.5 hours. So all that serene footage. Now you know that they gave us
that serene footage took a lot of work.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Wow. But this kind of ties into one of the other questions I wanted to ask you. What would you say is like the most rewarding part of the work that you do? So like hearing that story, you're like, yeah, the footage and everything came together, but we really went through it and we're like on a wild ride. So will you talk a little bit about what's the most rewarding part of your work?
I think this film specifically, the most rewarding part has been, it's so personal to both myself and Jeff. Obviously it's personal because it's Jeff's story, but it's also personal for me because has very similar themes to my life. And we're talking about something that is very personal. It's, you know, trauma and our family history and our purpose in life and finding happiness and our relationships with our loved ones. Like there's all the most vulnerable things, right? So I think the most rewarding thing for me has been hearing how the film hits with different people. And everybody finds a little bit of their journey in Jeff's journey in some way or another. And I think that's amazing that you can tell one man's specific journey, but so many people from all different walks of life and ages and genders and ethnicities and everything can somehow connect to it. And then it's also been really rewarding that, Jeff has shared with me that he's had family members reach out to him and be able to talk to him about stuff that they've never been able to talk about before because he's been vulnerable in this film. And that's just so cool. I mean, we all can use more vulnerability and more empathy. And I think that that's amazing if this can, cause people to talk about that type of stuff.
I love that. Wow. That opened up such a space for him, I bet, that would have never come necessarily, or would have come way later down the road without this opportunity. So I love to hear that. Someone who is joining us asked, what would be your dream film to create?
I really want my next. So I did get a grant to produce another film next year. So that's going to be my next project for Indiana Humanities. But my dream film that I want to create is a feature. I want to create a documentary about the dismissal of women's pain and the healthcare system. All women, but also in particular women of color. And I want to just talk about the impact that has on women. I personally was diagnosed with endometriosis after having it for they suspect about 9 years, but it took 7 years of going to a doctor to get diagnosed. And that's 7 years that I could have been getting, more preventative care. So I think it's just interesting. It's a theme that I hear from a lot of women, and I think it's important to talk about. And so that is a huge feat. I want to make sure that I'm researching and I don't want it to be about me. I don't want my story to be in it. But when you're talking about such a huge umbrella issue, that's going to require a lot of time and work. So hopefully I can get started on that after the next project.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, I know you will have a new group of champions behind you that I'm sure we will want to see that piece, and we'll follow along with you for that as you move forward. So another question that was asked is, what is one of your favorite movies?
One of my favorite movies. It's so funny. All of my favorite movies are usually fiction films, but I do love a good book to film adaptation. I think that when you can do that successfully and make something just as rich in visual form as it was, while you were reading it, I think that's amazing. So two of my favorite films are Atonement and Cold Mountain. I think those are two of the best book to movie adaptations that I've seen. And they're two of my favorite books as well. So that's saying something. My favorite documentary is called The Horse Boy. And not a lot of people have seen it, but it's about a young boy with autism and his family who work kind of in the psychology realm. They decide they want to try and incorporate horses because Rowan, the little boy, loves horses, and whenever he gets on a horse he can actually coherently speak and express his feelings. It's this amazing connection that he has with them. So they want to combine horses and healing, and so they take him to Mongolia. And obviously it's not about fixing him as a whole. It's about the family and who's normal and who's not normal, and what does all this mean. And it's just a beautiful little film. And the dad also wrote a book called The Horse Boy, which talks about that whole journey as well as the process of filming the film. So that's one of my favorite documentaries as well.
Okay, I love that. I think we have some new things to check out on our end if we haven't seen those. So I'm going to ask two more questions from those joining us, and then one more question from our team, and then we're going to move to the Zoom room. And there is lots of questions, so I'm hoping people are going to come and join us.
Yes,
and just
join us in the
hear
Zoom
and ask some more questions. So the next question is, how do you find film festivals in Indy, and what are some of your favorites?
Well, the Heartland Film Festival is my absolute favorite film festival of all time. Not just because I used to go every year as a kid, but also I've worked for them seasonally. So I interned with them after my freshman year of college in 2010, so 10 years ago. And then I've worked seasonally for them in 2013, 2014, and 2019. And so I just love that whole team. I love Heartland. I've loved seeing it grow into what it is today. It to be one of the most well-respected film festivals. So that's amazing. And it was just an absolute dream come true to have 50 Little Birds in Heartland this year. Like I can't even describe. And to have its premiere there too was just incredible. They know good films because I know the team, and so to have them put their stamp of approval on it really meant a lot to me. But then otherwise, most film festivals use Film Freeway as a way to submit, and that's just where you can find festivals of all sorts. I've kind of focused on any that are in the Midwest, any that are short documentary film festivals, any that are related to nature or art or to mental health. So those are kind of the ones that I've been submitting to, and we've been accepted to 6 film festivals so far this year.
Incredible. I know before this you shared with us it's Philadelphia and Atlanta are going to be
Pittsburgh
2.
And then Atlanta are coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Incredible. So crazy. I love it. Okay. One more question and then my question from our team. So how does anthropology and filmmaking intersect for you?
Yeah. So I think that they do really intersect. It was interesting. I didn't really realize it until my junior year of college. So I got a minor in anthropology, and then I studied film and television studies as my major. And I showed up to an anthropology class one day, and they were showing the same film that I had just watched 2 days before in a film class. And I was like, what? This is insane. And then it just sort of like clicked how much they overlap. And of course I got to leave class because I was like, I already seen this. But it was really cool. And I think that it's just my interest in anthropology and really understanding a culture or a group has really helped me. When I was in college for my senior thesis, I made a film about the group called Nerd Fighters, who are fans of Hank and John Green, if you're familiar with them. And to sort of be able to step back and look at it from an anthropological point of view, which is all about not putting yourself in there, not, just sort of, observing from outside and telling a true story. I think it really is an intersection of my 2 big passions. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. So this last one is just something we like to ask all of the folks that come on with us. And it is, what does community and culture, or what does community mean to you? Wow, I should know our question because we ask it all the time. What does community mean to you?
To me, community means a place where a rising tide lifts all boats, where competition isn't the main goal, where people aren't focused on stepping on one another to get up a ladder. One of the reasons why I have stayed in Indiana to be an Indiana filmmaker is because oftentimes in this industry, it can be a very hierarchy-based system. And what I love about filmmakers here in Indiana is everybody has a seat at the table. Everybody has a voice. It's very collaborative and it's very community oriented. And we all know that the more we all can grow the film scene, the more successful we'll all be. And I really love that part of it. So that's kind of the epitome of what community means to me. Everybody else uplifting everybody else for the benefit of the whole.
I love that. That I think is just so encouraging and says so much about the group that is in Indiana that you work with. So thanks for sharing that with us. I know that we have dropped the link for our Zoom in the comments for tonight. So we will bring me back on and we'll wrap up and move over to that Zoom space. But I know I could say thank you 100 times, Hannah. So I'm so
Thank
grateful
you.
that you came on and just shared a little about your story and more about 50 Little Birds with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Erica. I appreciate it.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much. Your story and just kind of like your experience was so enlightening. I wish we had like more time. So I'm excited that we'll have the Zoom opportunity to be able to ask you more questions, because there's just so much depth that you kind of like touched on that like I'm really excited to share with. And I hope you guys that are listening have the same opportunity to learn a little bit more about the filmmaking process. We're really excited. So hop on right after. We just, like Eric had mentioned, we just updated the Zoom link for you. So pay attention to that, and we'll hop on in just a second. Excited for next month. A great opportunity to hang out with us as we kind of celebrate Christmas our own way in the holiday cheer. So again, thank you guys so much for being a part of Community and Culture Night. If you have an opportunity to support Hannah, we will drop the best way to connect with her on the group page. So feel free to connect with her and find ways to support her, as we like to support our people who hang out with us. So again, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully we'll see you in just a second. Take care, guys.